Newly elected congresswoman says that President Trump is bought. CNN continues to be a dead horse. And the once scientific journal, Nature, has turned into a social justice playground. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. Starting off today, we're going to be talking about the newly elected Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. She tweeted out today the following. This is an article from The Hill, in which I'm reading this from. It states, once again, our president proves that you can't buy a moral compass, and Saudi Arabia proves that you can, on the other hand, buy a president. And what she is referring to is an article from CNN titled, President Trump signals he will not take strong actions against Saudi Arabia or its Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman for the death and dismemberment of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, however you say his name. He's a Washington Post journalist who was killed by some Saudi Arabian members, not sure who exactly they were. He met with them at the Istanbul embassy, if I'm not mistaken, and there he was killed. There's been a lot of talk about this out in the media about what President Trump should do. Most Democrats, if not all of them, and some Republicans believe that President Trump should stop doing deals with Saudi Arabia after the murder of this journalist. However, President Trump has stated that he is not going to stop doing business with them. He also stated that he doesn't believe the Crown Prince had anything to do with this murder whatsoever, although the CIA claims that he does. One thing I want to add about the CIA's claim is that they are going off an assumption from what I understand. They're stating that this kind of hit wouldn't have been set out without the Crown Prince's approval, which may be true, but that leaves room for speculation in that there is no definitive answer that he actually gave the call. We're just going on an assumption based on how their government ran. This could be 100% true, but they're going off of assumptions, and yet the media is taking this as if it is a wholehearted fact, although it isn't. And President Trump has stated that the Crown Prince has vehemently denied these accusations that have been put against him. Now, what I want to talk about is the newly elected Congresswoman, Ilhan Omar, who states that President Trump doesn't have a moral compass. I cannot believe that she's the one saying this. She literally ran on abolishing ICE, which, for those of you who don't know what ICE does, they protect us from the illegal immigrants who come over here. And most of them, actually, 89% of ICE apprehensions were those that of people who committed crimes or had pending criminal charges. Also, ICE has arrested 2,000 child pedophiles, 1,900 murderers, 2,000 kidnappers, and 11,800 sexual predators. Now, I find this very hysterical that the left claims that if we can even save one life from confiscating weapons and more gun control, that it's worth it. But, God forbid, we keep illegal immigrants out to save 1,900 lives. That's a totally different story there. And to them, that would be a false equivalence. And, there's all this talk about the Me Too movement, about powerful men, and white men in particular, being the oppressors in our society because of the patriarchy that's set up. And the Democrats want to end this, which everybody should want to end this. This shouldn't just be a partisan thing, and I don't believe it is. I think everybody really wants to end this. The Democrats make it seem as if it is their only goal. They're the only ones with that goal to eliminate all sexual harassment, which just isn't true. And I'm saying this because ICE has arrested 11,800 sexual predators that were more than likely not white, straight men. They were people of different races from different countries and probably weren't all that wealthy either. So it is very hypocritical for the left to claim that they want to save lives by banning guns, But when it comes to deaths that actually could have been prevented had we have had a better border patrol system set up and just a better border patrol system set up, then we would have prevented 1,900 deaths. They don't acknowledge this, though. This is when you become a xenophobe, when you want to close off the borders or just make it more difficult for people to enter into the country, who, make it more on a merit-based system than just a free-for-all, which should be done. So she wants to abolish ICE, yet President Trump has no moral ground. She also wants to dismantle the border. She wants to completely demilitarize it and make it so illegal immigrants can actively enter in our country without any consequences and become a citizen in the United States. On top of that, she wants to give free health care for all. She also wants to give free college and free schooling from K to 12. Mind you, right now, the federal government spends $12,000 per child in America for schooling. So there's going to have to be increase in the spending on children. There's going to have to be an increase in the spending on adults in general. Is there going to be a cutoff point for which an individual can go back to school? Can a 40-year-old go to school for free? I mean, these are questions we have to ask. Another question we have to ask is, how are we going to pay for this? How? How are we going to pay to send every child and every adult to get a free education? I'll tell you the answer is to raise taxes on the working and middle class. They create the illusion that they're going to raise taxes only on the 1%. Well, here's the thing about taxes. When they were first introduced to only tax the rich. And what happened? There wasn't enough money being collected from taxing the rich. And the rich also had more opportunities to say, you know what? I don't want to pay these hefty fines. I'm the only one being penalized for making money. Therefore, I'm going to take my money and my investments elsewhere. Then what happens is the government's like, oh crap, the rich are moving or sending their money elsewhere. Now we still depending on taxes, so now we have to tax the middle and lower class people. So yes, this whole Robin Hood thing that the Democrats want to do has completely hurt the middle and working class Americans. However, she wants to continue to hurt the middle and lower class Americans. She wants to allow open borders, completely do away with ICE. What's next? What law enforcement is she next going to want to take out because of its oppressive behavior? This is a sick ideology that people on the left have right now. And nobody wants to talk about it. The reason nobody wants to talk about it is because it is such a beautiful idea to allow free-flowing immigration. These countries are imaginary things. They're not even real. Okay, fair enough. But the thing is that these countries within them have a culture. They have a way of life and different values than other countries. We may share some similarities. There may be some huge overlaps between Western countries, but each country is unique because of the people that inhabit it. The misconception we have is that we all share the same values, therefore open borders would be okay. This is simply not true. If we look over to the Middle East, they have completely different values than us. I'm not dogging them, nor am I saying that we have better values. All I'm saying is that there's a clear distinction between values there. Most of their countries are run by religion, and our country is typically run on competence. I know we have corruption, and there are incompetent people in office, but for the most part, we have a hierarchy built on competence because we live in a very functional society where they don't have that in the Middle East. You go over to Russia, the environment's completely different. You go over to China, the environment's completely different. Having open borders does not do anything but destroy all countries. And what happens when we destroy every single country and we're all just we're living on a landmass? Who governs them? Because then the United States government is no longer the United States government if we have no borders. That's the only thing that is making us a country. So it wouldn't be far-fetched to say that if we did away with all borders, that it would only be right to have one world government. And how is that going to work? Could you imagine the power games that would go into trying to control 7 billion people? Yeah, that's pretty scary stuff. Now, she, like I stated, is the one calling President Trump out for not having any morals when she actively is looking to destroy the United States of America by getting rid of our borders, by taxing the hell out of middle class and working Americans, by allowing illegal immigrants to come in and get free health care, free education. I mean, these are extraordinary things that she wants to do, and not in a good way. This is horrible. This is extraordinarily bad, what she wants to do. And this will actually be the death of America. Right now, we're having a hard enough time funding our military to make sure we keep control over in the Southeast China Sea. We're having trouble upgrading our cybersecurity within our military. We're having trouble funding our infrastructure. These are things that we need to really work on, yet Democrats completely forget about this. And mind you, she's not the only newly elected congressperson who has this same ideology. There are several others who share the same ideology, and it's actually pretty scary because Nancy Pelosi, who is bidding for the Speaker of the House, who will more than likely earn that spot again, she had to negotiate with some heavyweight progressives in order to get that position. And she had to allow for them to get more seats on powerful committees, or at least give them the option to run on these powerful committees. She also, there's some talk about her doing away with the pay-go rule on the floor, which means that before you propose a bill that's going to cost money, you should know how much it costs. They're talking about doing away with that, which is completely insane. That means that these new progressives can propose a Medicaid for all, and not even tell us how much it's going to cost or how they're going to fund it. This is dangerous. Yet, let's remember, President Trump is the immoral one here. So that's what's going on there. And now there's also something else that CNN cannot just put to rest. And this is a new article that came out today, although this is old news. That is, President Trump apparently attempted to launch he attempted to prosecute James Comey, the former FBI director, and Hillary Clinton. And in this article, they make it seem as if the White House counsel Dan McGavin had saved him from being impeached, because it would seem as if he's retaliating against his rivals, although he won the election. So what need does he have to retaliate? They didn't do anything from stopping him to become the president. They may have made some covert attempts to prevent him from being president, but they failed. And they keep going back to this because there's nothing else that they can dog President Trump on. President Trump has just endorsed a criminal justice reform bill that will undo a lot of what Bill Clinton and other Democrats had enforced into our legal system, and some Republicans as well. And they just keep bringing this old stuff up. And I want to add that this wasn't unwarranted on President Trump's part. Maybe he himself couldn't have prosecuted or launched a prosecution on these two individuals, but they both broke the law. Hillary Clinton broke several laws. James Comey leaked classified information. Hillary Clinton destroyed and tampered with evidence. She was transmitting classified information on an unauthorized server. She then bleached it, drilled it, beat it with a hammer so that way nobody can redeem the information. She was using the Clinton Foundation as essentially a way for her to be paid off to do other countries' biddings, so that way the United States can run in favor for other countries while Bill Clinton was in office and while she was the Secretary of State. These are disgusting things that she did, And she rightfully should be on trial for everything she's done. However, because of her status and who she is and her last name, she won't be. That's the privilege the left talks about all the time, yet their own get that privilege more than anybody else. And we don't seem to call that out, which is completely insane to me. Now, another thing that we want to cover today, switching something up a little bit, that's it for the President Trump rant on him wanting to prosecute Hillary Clinton and James Comey. Now we're switching over to Nature, which used to be a journal of science, but now they have lost their meaning. They have been taken over by postmodernists, by social justice warriors who believe everything is a social construct and that you can shape the world into whichever way you want to, and that there are an infinite number of ways to interpret the world, which that latter part is true. And they want to completely reconstruct everything that we have in America. Mind you, let me tell you who else wanted to reconstruct everything that was in their country and believed everything to be a social construct. You remember a guy named Stalin? Yep, he killed roughly, the Soviet Union killed roughly anywhere from, there's estimates of 10 to 60 million people. Mao? Yeah, a lot of people don't know about Mao, but he killed more people than Stalin and Hitler put together. There's roughly 100 million deaths at his hand. Hitler is also another example of this. The first two were communist. And in case we forgot what communism is, that's the far left ideology, which now is being portrayed as postmodernist, which also could be conflated to the social justice warriors, or, not conflated, but translated to the social justice warriors. It can also be translated now as progressive. Some people who consider themselves socialists don't seem to realize that socialism is a tool to get to communist. Also, it's a tool that can lead to fascism, which the left is the one that created fascism as well. Nobody talks about that. Not one bit. FDR was apparently a fascist, according to Mussolini, the creator of fascism. FDR sent over people from his administration to go see what Mussolini was doing. That way they can implement some fascist rules into America. We don't talk about that. Not at all. So, yes, going back to the article here. So, Nature is being overtaken by this, the Science Journal. The reason I say this is because on the 30th of last month, they had an article written titled, U.S. Proposal for Defining Gender Has No Basis in Science. And so just to summarize this, the Department of Health and Human Services wants to establish a legal definition for male and female based solely on people's genitalia, which is exactly how you are described and is biological evidence of your gender and sex. They believe, their argument is that gender is a social construct, which it is not. Gender is not a social construct. If you're born with a penis, you're a male. That's your sex. Your sex and gender are one and the same. There's no disputing that. Biology has already proven this several years ago, decades ago. This is a debate that has been finished for quite some time. This is part of the postmodernist ideology in which is why I stated everything I did before coming into the actual article itself. Because this is what the left is trying to do. They're trying to tell you that everything's made up and that we can recreate everything and do away with science. We can even eliminate science and do our own thing. That's what the left wants us to believe right now, and that's completely dangerous. This is filling the minds of so many young people right now, thinking that gender is a social construct and that you only act like a woman because society has told you to act like a woman, when in reality, you're really a man, even though you have a vagina. Yeah, it makes no sense to me. People are losing their minds over this stuff. Seriously, this debate is over. There is no debate to be had here. Science has already state has already ended this. And of course, I know there's going to be some people who state, well, what about the people who are born with two genitalias? What about the people who are actually transgender? And etc., etc., etc. Well, newsflash, that is a sliver of the population across the world, let alone in the United States. And when it comes to transgenderism, I'm no expert by any means. I don't claim to be. What I do know is, from the little research that I've done, is most individuals who identify as transgender understand that they are the sex in which they are. Some of them don't even want to go through a transformation. So there's a lot of confusion when it comes to that. But like I said, I'm no expert when it comes to transgenderism. But we cannot try to do away with science because it hurts people's feelings. The truth hurts. Just like Jack Nicholson said in the movie, I can't remember, you can't handle the truth. That is exactly how the left is right now. They can't handle the truth. These are the facts that sex and gender you can't separate the two. There's even arguments that you can't separate sex, sexuality, and gender. Those are all intertwined things, or at least there are huge overlaps. So this right here is pretty scary. Like, we did a episode yesterday talking about the New York Times and them being used as a propaganda tool for communist China, stating that the American dream is only in China right now, although they imprison a million Muslims, although they watch all your movements and have a social credit score in which will dictate whether or not you can leave the country, whether you can travel in the country, what kind of jobs you'll get, based on what you look at, what you read, what you search, what you watch, what you eat. All these things can determine the level of artificial freedom you get in China. That's all they're doing. And yet the New York Times says the American dream's alive over here. Nature, which used to be a very good journal to get scientific information from, now is turning into a social justice warrior playground. And yes, this is very scary. This is very scary because the left runs most of the media. They really do. There's no debate on that either. So that's the news for today. And we're about to get into the segment here. So for those of you watching on YouTube, Instagram, TV, however you're consuming this, you're not going to be able to see this part of the video. So have a great Thanksgiving for those who are not Patreon. So remember, if you want to get this segment, the fun historical facts, then you're going to have to be a Patreon. So make sure you go over to patreon.com/abetterworld_22. Be sure to do that if you want to get these segments of historical fun facts. All right.